A band that's been in hiding for nearly 5 years skulked back into Canadian bars this spring. The wooden stars are shining again. The mid-90s was the band's heyday. Canadian pop music was going through a bit of an awkward phase. The Halifax pop explosion was petering out, and the thriving regional indie scenes that we know today, they were still in their infancy. It was around this time that four friends with a remarkably twisted sense of humor got together in the suburbs of Ottawa. No, not the Liberal Party, the Wooden Stars. They've been dormant now almost as long as they were jamming and making new music. Bandwidth's Rolf Klausener celebrates their return to the rock light on the acclaimed concert series by profiling one of Canada's most influential art rock bands of the last decade. This is what we call the 613 Report.
Do you want me to clip my fingernails on the CBC? Are you allowed to do really arty stuff like this? And B, two-part question. B, is this arty? Anywho.
Arty or not, I was really tempted to get those grubby nail clippings analyzed because maybe, buried deep in Mike Fierstack's genetic code, there'd be some hint as to what makes him and the Wooden Stars write some of the most unusual pop music to ever come out of Ottawa, or Canada for that matter. They formed in the early 90s when Mike met Julian Bayard and they soon began writing together. They then recruited Julian's younger brother Matthew to play bass and eventually befriended former heavy metal aficionado Andrew McCormick to play the drums. The Wooden Stars' buddy, Dave Draves, was then an aspiring producer who had yet to record anything. He brought the boys into his practice space and endeavored to commit their unorthodox sound to tape.
I had no idea what they were doing. And what I mean by that is it was definitely good music. When people would say, oh, it's just weird, I felt it was a great balance of something that came from influences that weren't obvious and also had a very musical overtone to it. Very challenging, but also very passionate. And I can say that about every song, I think, on the first album.
Now, this was 1995, when grunge and distortion still reigned the airwaves. The Wooden Stars bucked the trends and used complex time signatures and clean interweaving guitars to create a sound infinitely more explosive than anything else out there, though Mike denies it was an intentional antidote to the mainstream.
I don't think it was really a reaction. Well, first of all, when I first started playing guitar, I'll speak for myself first, and then I'll speak for everybody else later. Well, I'm not a very technically minded person, and if I have anything more to think about than a chord and a volume knob, I might just lose my nerve on stage. But so there's that. That's not true anymore, and as new audiences will see, we have too much distortion now. Complex, intricate, and fast-paced and manic music isn't really well suited to having tons of distortion on it. It would sound like a sonic tumbleweed, I think.
That was the name of your last record?
Yeah, it's the name of the next record. Yeah.
They followed up with their 1997 album, Mardi Gras. The playfulness was still there, but the songs were revealing something else.
I think that they're just less ridiculous, for one, and also just the complexities of them and the sophistication is a little bit obscured. Maybe they're a little bit more artful than the earlier ones, which are just kind of manic mashups, you know, and the later stuff is a lot more arranged and it's more sophisticated in the way it's put together, in my opinion, even though we're definitely each freaking out less. But I think that the music is just as unusual.
All that I can think about are fall days, winter snows and summer evenings on my
The pace increased in 1999 when they released their highly acclaimed third album, The Moon, as well as a collaborative album with their good friend and former Eric's Trip chanteuse, Julie Doiron. The album, aptly titled Julie Doiron and the Wooden Stars won the Best Alternative Album at the 2000 Juno Awards, beating out an odd collection of significantly more commercial alternative acts. The band was definitely busier than they'd ever been, opening for huge acts like the Tragically Hip across the country in support of both albums, but the relatively sudden success after years of toiling had a bit of an effect.
Well, I mean, ambition can either make you stronger or blow you apart, you know, and I think for us, maybe it blew us apart. By the time we were working so hard at what we were doing so many years ago, it had really become a lifestyle and a real, you know, it's one of those things, if you don't check yourself once in a while and say, like, am I doing what I want to be doing because I love doing it? Or am I doing it because I don't really know how to do anything else after 5 years of focusing only on this, you know? Those can be pretty painful questions to ask.
The Wooden Stars stopped playing live in 2001. Mike moved to Montreal and continued recording and touring with his solo project, Snail House. Co-songwriter Julian Bayard and current bass player Josh Latour relocated to Toronto, and drummer Andrew McCormick remained in Ottawa. But in the fall of 2004, on the 10th anniversary of their first album, the Wooden Stars were destined to shine again. With a little coaxing, they all agreed to play at the birthday party for their good friend, Dave Draves, the once fledgling producer who now runs the renowned Little Bullhorn Studios in Ottawa.
The one thing you should know about the Wooden Stars is the more they play, the more they evolve and the less they hang on to. So for me, it was really great to see them go back and touch on that point that actually sort of ignited the whole thing.
It really was a remarkable show, and everyone there could see that the band was infused with a new energy and unparalleled creative force. That birthday party performance marked the end of a 3-year hiatus that was really beginning to seem indefinite.
I think now that's not that type of dark issue isn't as much of a problem, you know. We all have things going on in our lives, and we realize that this can be one of them again, you know. It doesn't have to overshadow everything else.